You don't have a sefer, you won't know the difference. This is a Rabbi Tadok in Pri Tzadik at the end of Vayikra, and it's a small, I wouldn't even call it an essay. It was like a sefer. It was like a kuntras or an essay that he wrote. This is B'Ksav Yad. Much of the Pri Tzadik is not B'Ksav Yad. It's written from the Talmidim. What we're learning all the time, Kedusha Shabbos is his Ksav Yad, and the Amal Shel Torah is his Ksav Yad. So, we covered Pesach. Just want to switch here. It says as follows: Kol hamar b'losaper v'yitzias Mitzrayim arezeh meshubach. The more you talk about Yitzias Mitzrayim, the better it is. Says in Mahagana, Kol hamar b'losaper v'yitzias Mitzrayim arezeh meshubach. So, it seems to be just that there's a value in Sipur, Yitzias Mitzrayim, speaking out the Yitzias Mitzrayim. Meaning, the Rambam famously says that a person is chayev on the Seder night to tell his son the story of Yitzias Mitzrayim. And if he doesn't have his children, you should tell it to your guests. And if you don't have any guests, you should tell it to your wife. And if you're sitting by yourself, chayev adam l'saper la'atzmai. So, what's the value in sitting at your table and talking to yourself? Think about it, daven it, read about it, learn about it. There's a mitzvah, the Rambam says, l'saper v'yitzias Mitzrayim, to be mesaper, dafka, to tell the story, the dibur, even if nobody's listening. So you see from this Rambam that there's a value in talking beyond the fact that somebody else is listening, which is very handy information in my business. Yeah. A value of Sipur. And that's Chazal say Kol Hamarba L'Saper B'Yitzias Mitzrayim, and the more the better. The more you're Mesaper, the better it is. Harezeh Meshubach. Also an interesting lashon. Harezeh Meshubach. Harezeh Meshubach. What's the zeh? Right? The person, like Harehu, I guess. Harezeh, you become more Meshubach, which you want to translate as what? More
praiseworthy.
Praiseworthy? Meshubach. So these Sipur Yitzias Mitzrayim somehow farbeset their mensch, meaning it makes a person into a more Meshubach. I mean, if a crop is Meshubach, it means it's juicier, it's more nutritious. So Harezeh Meshubach. So says Reb Tadok, Mizeh shetzarech l'chadesh eza davar be'inyan Yitzias Mitzrayim. Mashma mizeh, it sounds like from here, Kol hamar b'lasaper b'Yitzias Mitzrayim. Not that you should tell so much a long story, but you should be mechadesh in the story itself. Mashma mizeh shetzarech l'chadesh eza davar be'inyan Yitzias Mitzrayim. You should be mechadesh something in Yitzias Mitzrayim, so how are you supposed to be marbe in something? We only know what we know. Like, we know the story of Yitzias Mitzrayim from the Chumash, and we know it from the Medrash, and we know it from the Gemara, and more than that we don't know. Maybe we know a little bit from hieroglyphics, but we know. So what are you being marbe l'saper b'Yitzias Mitzrayim? Tell the story. Just tell the story best you can. So Rabbi Tadok is understanding, which I hear the nuance of the Chiddush, that marbe l'saper Yitzias Mitzrayim means that you should be machadish in the story. How are you machadish in a story? I'm telling the story. How am I machadish? It's like a very anti-Brisker idea. Like how are you machadish in a story? Lo matzinu, we don't find shetiknu l'sader kol hasipurim, that you're just supposed to say over every story about Yetzias Mitzrayim. Let's talk about the frogs now, like everyone likes to talk about the frogs. Let's talk about the locusts. Let's talk about the darkness. Let's talk about the Kriyas Yamsuf that it went in 12 ways and not in one way. It's not the pshat that here, get organized here, Google Yetzias Mitzrayim and say over everything that you read. Loi matzinu, b'chiddush and halacha. Loi matzinu shetiknu that they were misakin, they chazal were misakin l'sader kol hasipurim af l'mitzvah min hamuvchar l'mahadir min hamahadrim. So that's not, he feels, what kol hamarbe l'saper b'yetzias Mitzrayim, you tell the story longer. The Rambam seems to be mashma, by the way, I feel obligated to mention, that you're supposed to tell the story better. Like the lashon of the Rambam is that when you tell the story at your Seder, you should really like practice and put on your best oratory ability. And ladies and gentlemen, I would like to tell you the story of Yetzias Mitzrayim. There's a mashma from the Rambam that it's the eichus of the sipur. Tell the story well, so it makes an impression on your children. But even that is not that you're telling more of the story. That's not kol amar b'lo. You're telling the story better. It has to do with the quality of the story. Al karchach hein hamarbe de meshubach hamachuvan. What it means here when it says hamarbe b'sipur Yetzias Mitzrayim hamachuvan, what it means is shiyach l'chadish u'lahaysef be'inyan hasipur b'denafshi eiza shvachim l'machem al atayv sheheti v'imanu b'Yetzias Mitzrayim milvad hamasupur v'yadua. We should come up with something else, another shvach for HaKadosh Baruch Hu in the Sipur Yetzias Mitzrayim.
How it affects us.
And how it affects us, which is a shvach or a reza meshubach.
So is it possible that shubach is talking about the stories?
Possible.
The story, not the person.
The zeh is very shver in that chazal, isn't it? A reza meshubach.
So Mishabeach the sipur. The
Maybe.
sipur is like muhuder. It's like more muhuder the sipur.
More Mishabeach, the story. More meshubach. You don't need muhuder.
Another person.
More meshubach.
Another person. The story itself is like becomes
Right. Not harehu meshubach.
Right. Or is that?
Could be. Hare zeh meshubach. If we start to think about the lashon, go over to your mind. It's hare zeh meshubach.
Maybe the mitzvah.
The mitzvah
of
is
the
meshubach.
sipur could be more meshubach.
The nekuda though is not to tell more story, not to tell it better, like it's all in the delivery, like the Rambam says, but he's saying to be mishabeach HaKadosh Baruch, like let's be ma'ayin in what came out of this Yetzias Mitzrayim. Like wow, what came out of Yetzias Mitzrayim? What came out of Yetzias Mitzrayim? This is a place for us that we have a makom to be machadesh more and more and more. Like what did we, my children, my guests, my wife, myself, what do we have from Yetzias Mitzrayim? Not to be taken lightly, because everything comes from Yetzias Mitzrayim. So harezeh meshubach. So the chov of the sipur Yetzias Mitzrayim lefi zeh is to be ma'ayin into the benefit of Yetzias Mitzrayim. To be ma'ayin into the chesed Hashem in Yetzias Mitzrayim. Milvad, besides for hamasupur v'yadua. It's not just telling more of the story, other benders. Is that what it is?
But is there an Indian of chiddush, even if it's not your chiddush, to bring other people's chiddushim?
Of course. But,
so it's not that I have to invent a new insight, it's that...
Right. This is not about being creative. It's about being misaper. Good point. It's not a chiyuv here. Come up with something, come up with a creative chiddush. The pshat is like to understand better, however it comes about. Like, here's the way that the Seder should go. The title of the Seder should be, what does Yetzias Mitzrayim mean to me? But wouldn't it be interesting, like, if you close the Haggadah for 20 minutes, or go around the table and say, what does Yetzias Mitzrayim mean to us? It feels awkward. Okay, that's the mitzvah. Awkward to put on tefillin on the airplane too. Awkward is awkward. But the mitzvah here at our table, at our tish, is what does Yetzias Mitzrayim mean to me? By the way, just saying a personal ha'ara, I don't know if you're yotzei this mitzvah by saying the Haggadah. And I don't even know if you say every vart in every Haggadah Our printer told us that he's produced, I forgot, what was the number? 200 new Haggadahs this year that I've never seen. That's one printer. One of 100 printers in Eretz Yisrael. Yeah, 200 new Haggadahs. Must be 2,000 new Haggadahs a year. Just for, but and you could say them all over at the table, and could be you weren't Yotzei, the lashon of Chazal. You have another dia of why did Hillel do this and why did that, but Dayenu, why this Dayenu before that Dayenu, very nice, all the Vertelach, nice, Limanat Torah, but you're not Makayim could be Kol Amar B'Lasaper B'Yitzias Mitzrayim. In fact, I don't know any place in the Seder where Makayim is so Kol Amar B'Lasaper. So the real yeshivish circles. So after they close the Haggadah at Chatzos and they finish eating their Afikah, but then they start talking. Kol Oisa Halayla, because of Chazal, they start talking all night long about Yetzias Mitzrayim. Hasidim say Shir Ashir, and the Yeshivish people are talking about Yetzias Mitzrayim. And even if there's no audience, you talk. But somewhere there in the Seder, there has to be the mitzvah of Sipur Yetzias Mitzrayim. And you have to be machadish in what does it mean to me. Milvad Hamasuper V'Yadua. So he's saying you're not even Yotzei with telling the story. You have to tell the story plus what it doesn't mean to me.
Why can't you do that with Chazal?
You can, but it's the Chazal in the
Meaning if you could do it with
Chazal in the Haggadah or the Vertelach that everybody says, or the papers that the kids bring home, are not necessarily being marba b'sipur Yetzias Mitzrayim. It might be, some of it might be, but most of it isn't. It's like all of the Torahs that we say, not necessarily Mekayim this mitzvah. You could do it. V'chein ha'maisa, take a look at the Maisa of Chazal. Shesipru kol halayla. What's the story? Somebody's all over the story. What's the story? Shesipru kol halayla. Maisa, who remembers? Rabbi Kiva, Rabbi Lazar. Huh?
In Bnei Brak, and Talmidim come in the morning.
Right. Very good. The Tanoim were sitting in Bnei Brak, and the Tanoim were sitting in Bnei Brak together. It was a Pelodic story. I mean, where was their families? Who's their wife sitting alone at home?
In a different room.
It wasn't even their makom. Who's in Bnei Brak? Maybe Rabbi Kiva lived in Bnei Brak, or he lived in Lud, but maybe he lived in Bnei Brak for a while, wherever Bnei Brak was. But the other ones lived in Yerushalayim, they lived in the Galil. Nobody lived there. So they picked up, they didn't go to a Pesach hotel. They came to some cave in Bnei Brak, under the Hadrian decrees, and they were Besaper B'Yetzias Mitzrayim, Besipur Yetzias Mitzrayim, Kol Oisoi Halayla, the whole night long. And the Talmidim, where were the Talmidim? Outside. Bring the Talmidim in. Wouldn't you love to be a fly on the wall? Bring the Talmidim inside. What are they doing outside? Wives are outside. The kids are outside. Rachel, the wife of Rabbi, she's not there. The Talmid, everybody's outside. What are they doing? But Agav, the Goinim say, comes from the Goinim, that Rabbi Akiva wanted to bring back the Shechina to Yerushalayim, and he wanted to. He felt it was time. It was 70 years after the Golus. He wanted to end the Hadrian decrees and bring Mashiach. He had to do it. He had a Bar Kochba, he had a Mashiach, he had an army. He wanted to bring Mashiach. He understood from the Tshuvas HaGoinim, says he understood that there was a koach on Leil Pesach to bring the Geula, al Yedei Sipur Yetzias Mitzrayim, al Pisoid, and he brought together the Gedolei Hador in one room, in one place, and they made a big meeting. The Talmidim had nothing to do with it, the wives had nothing to do with it. This was an exercise in bringing the Geula. What was going on over there was a summit meeting of the Gedolei Hador, the Tzaddikim of the Dor, and some of the biggest minds and hearts of history, coming together in one room and spending a whole night trying to bring the Geula. And how were they doing it? Hayamesaper b'sipur Yetzias Mitzrayim. The Talmidim said, Igiyaz man kriya shma shel shachris, which the Goinim say that you've accomplished it. Igiyaz man kriya shma shel shachris. The Goinim said, the Talmidim said, we accomplished it, but not now. Now's not the time of the Geula. They did end the Hadrian decrees. Could be that they ended the Hadrian decrees, which was huge. Didn't bring the Geula. We're still waiting for the Geula. But Higiyaz man kriya shma shel shachris means the beginning of the day has begun.
Why
The
does
day.
Shema mean a coder for Gula?
Kriya shma shel shachris means there's a yoim, or makabel ol malchus shemayim bayoim, as opposed to balayla. So a new dawn. A whole different understanding of the Haggadah.
Funny, so then the whole last 1900 years is the day rather than the night.
It's the day.
Usually,
Ikvus of the Mashiach. Since the end of the Roman decrees, the Hadrian decrees, starts the dawn of the day, and it gets stronger and it gets stronger and stronger with all of the terrible things that have happened in the last since the time of the Romans. But it's the beginning of the day. Igiyaz man kriya shma shel
Also,
shachris.
Pesachim starts with the Or and there at night. You have the, there's a light during the night still. There's like a morning night. Machlekes at the beginning.
Right. May Masai Karen Eshma Arvis. Bracha starts with the night. But, Higiyas man kriya shma shel shachris. We're past the Zman of the Golus. It's not going to get darker. It's getting brighter from here. And that was an uftu of their. Says Rabbi Tadok here, Mashalai Nimsa. I'm sorry. V'chein ha'maisa shesipru kol halayla. This story that they spoke about Yetzias Mitzrayim all night long, Mistama Gamkein, probably Gamkein Humashachitshu Lidrosh Bezeh Kol Echad. Each one was Mechadesh. What did they talk about? How many times can you say over the Midrashim and the story of Yetzias Mitzrayim? Where they read the Mayam Lois together. What did they do? Kol Oisoi Halayla. And the answer is, it was Gamkein Humashachitshu Lidrosh Bezeh Kol Echad. They were Dorish in the Sipur itself to understand. He's saying a very Dakas idea, I think, that to understand the Shevach of HaKadosh Baruch Hu that he gave us Yetzias Mitzrayim. Took us out of Mitzrayim. We don't have one medrash, one mechilta, which is on Shmos, which tells us the things that they said on that night. Nor were the Talmidim. Why? Not because the Talmidim were not there to listen. They were outside, as it says in the story. Usually, like if it says in the Gemara that Chazal were Dorish Ba'aliyas Beishan, or they were Dorish in this place, we have the drasha. Here we have nothing except for the story itself, that they said B'sipur Yetzias Mitzrayim. We don't know what they said. Nira, the reason why we don't have it in Chazal, says Rabbi Tadok, say historic. No. Because the Talmidim weren't with them. Nira and the Pshat is the Hayu Aiskim B'Saydais V'Nistar She'en Legalus L'Talmidim. They were on a madrega of side that Talmidim were not allowed to be there. Not everything. There's one Megala. So they were on a madrega of side. V'alkein Lo Niskalu Divrayim Lanu, and that's why we don't know what they said. But Nira, and it seems Mashukasa B'Chol Marbe Chol Hamarbe Kol. You could just say Chayiv Adam Laharbois, Kol Hamarbe Kol L'Rabbois L'Rabbois. The Azur Shus L'Chol Echad Laharbois. That even though those were the Tanoim, and they had to be Mechadesh on their level, which was a level that even the Tanoim, even the Talmidim of the Tanoim couldn't be privy to, we have to be Mechadesh on our level. Ki Yadua B'Sfarim, as is known in Sfarim, and this sentence here is the main issue of this part of the essay, the Pesach, that the word Pesach itself, remez, or romes, Pesach. 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 My mouth speaks. He says it's B'Sfarim, it's Mefurish in the Arizal. Ki mikoydem haya dibor begalus. Because before Pesach, the Pesach Mitzrayim, dibor was begalus, ki yadua, Ve'al kein Amar Moshe Rabbeinu olav Hashem lo ish devarim anoichi. So let's just catch up here and explain. What we're learning now is that the Indian of Sipur Yetzias Mitzrayim, back to the beginning. What's the Indian of talking? What happens when we talk? It's not always a milo to talk, but on Pesach night it's a milo to talk. Marbe l'sipur b'yetzias l'saper b'yetzias Mitzrayim. Marbe l'sipur b'yetzias Mitzrayim. Areza meshubach. So milo to talk. What happens when you talk? The way I understand it is that rabbis machshavos b'levish, we can think, we can feel, we can meditate, but until you articulate what it is that you're feeling, so you're dealing with the concept, you're not dealing with reality. Things don't become real until they're articulated.
Masa.
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 Dibur, look, you see this b'chush. Sometimes you're thinking something, and when you talk it out, you see that what you were thinking was not right, or you get what you were thinking clearer.
But isn't that just because you have to organize your thoughts?
To organize your thoughts.
But the dibur is
what?
The dibur is more. Now I can speak because I've organized my thoughts, but I don't know if the dibur is making it.
No, the dibur is making it. When you speak it out, you get more clarity.
No, but I think beyond getting more clarity, you're creating a metzius. I think this is the deep thing that we don't necessarily know all by us. It's not necessarily intuitive. That it's not just a question of finding a person can't talk is patur for many mitzvahs. There's the union of speaking something out. I mean, learning it's for sure this way. You look at like a lot of svarim. I don't want to say anything bad, but there was a lot of svarim that came out from very, very chashuv rabbanim in, let's say, the United States in the 1940s and 50s and 60s. You know, the rabbi of Kansas, the rabbi of New Orleans, the rabbi of Omaha. Like you can see all of these svarim. These svarim sort of like, it's so interesting that these people, like names they learned in the yeshivas of Europe. They survived the war, came to America, and they learned. And these svarim are not really used in yeshivas. Some people, look at it here and there. Most of these svarim never got anywhere except for the grandchild trying to publicize it and reprinting it. It doesn't really get anywhere, and the reason is because they're not such good svarim. They're soft, and a lot of times not clear thinking as you would have from Rabbi Haber or Rabbi Shimon or Chaim Brisker. And the reason is because they were sitting themselves. They were sitting themselves in Oklahoma, and nobody to talk to. So they took to writing. They were B'nai Torah, Chashuv people. They took to writing and they wrote. But the writing is not the same as dibur. Ksiva does what you're saying. It organizes your thoughts, your writing. It's not the same as dibur. It's not. The dibur, so on even the most basic level, dibur organizes your thoughts in a different way. But on a deeper level, let's absorb this. Dibur was begolus. Dibur could be begolus until the dibur comes out. This is a golus in here. My nefesh is a place of golus. So Moshe Rabbeinu said, you want me to speak to Paro? Want me to actually talk to Paro? You don't talk about appearing. You want me to talk to Lo ish devarim anoichi. There's no geula that I can speak. Ani aral sfasayim.
It's interesting. It's like the opposite of what we would think, because we think that
this is the geula. That's the golus.
Galus is out there somewhere.
Golus
trapped inside.
So let me explain to you. Geula means that which is a concept becomes real. When you speak, Paro said, "Mi Hashem asher eshma b'koilai." It's a concept. It's not b'kolo. So the Pesach, which is a pun on the word Pesach, refers to the geula of not just my dibur. It's al yedei dibur. There's a geula of my nefesh. Chol hamarba b'sipur yitzias Mitzrayim harei zeh meshubach. I'm creating geula mamash. And harei zeh meshubach. Mashu acher l'gamri. The milah of talking is the same as the chesaron of talking. Because if my head is full of shtus, and I talk, I've created a reality out of those shtus. Hirhuri aveira, varim shebalev.
David HaMelech did the same thing with his Tehillim. I mean, he spoke it out. He sang it.
Earlier,
Yeah.
Shmuel Hanavi,
Shmuel.
Shmuel's mother. Where do we learn? Shmuel's mother wants to have a son, Chana, Egli, they want to have a child. She's davening. Now, how's she davening?
Out loud.
Yeah. No.
Her lips are
Her
moving.
lips are moving. Svaseha na'ois v'koila einoi nishma. Her voice, v'yachshaveha l'shikaira. So it looks like some kind of a drunk. What's the pshat in a drunk? You know, this is close to us. It was just yesterday, right? what's the pshat in the shikaira? Pshat in the shikaira is I'm talking and nothing is coming out. Like I'm talking and it's not making any sense. I'm talking and what am I talking? Unless somebody has a lave zahav, which we see a lot of, and I'm talking and wow, look what's coming out. Nichnas yayin yotzosai. So by Shavel, the shikaira is stomach. Like what's the story for? The story is that look, it's like a shikar, not like she's a nut case, my wife, but Shavel like shikaira is the pshat that her davening is such that she's mamish creating something. From here we learn, as you know, that two important things, one more known than the other. The known thing that we learn from here is the Gemara learns, and this is the Shulchan Aruch, that when you daven Shemona Esrei, you have to move your lips. None of this reading like the Goyim do. You have to move your lips. Why? Because if you're just reading, then it's machshava. And if you're moving your lips, it's dibur. And dibur is creating a new reality. So when you're davening, you're not thinking, you're not meditating. You can do that also. But that's backing up. That's the process which comes to dibur. The dibur itself, we learned from Chana, and look what she was zocha to a Shmuel. The dibur itself is faseha na'is. We also learn from here, v'koila eina nishma. So the Zohar says, if you're davening Shemona Esrei and somebody else, the person next to you, hears your davening, HaKadosh Baruch Hu eino shemeya. Something to be nizharin.
But in her case, did she hear herself?
You have to hear yourself.
She
He
did.
didn't hear her. That's
Okay.
all we know.
Uh-huh.
The Mashmaya says that he didn't hear. So here's like an interesting Jewish exercise of articulating without sound. That's so I mean all of this translation of the silent meditation, the silent devotion, not 100% accurate because it's silent talking.
I'm wondering if you can bring two ideas together. The Haggadah is about building a munah, one of the running themes of building a munah. And we're saying here that Pesach, that's speaking it as reality. So I'm wondering if it's the same idea, meaning that when a person brings something into the physical world through dibur, that in and of itself is a simon, a reflection of the munah. It's not just a thought in my head. Once I'm bringing it in,
Creation of emunah.
correct.
Listen to this pasuk. Hamanti ki adaber. Hamanti ki adaber. I believe because I'm talking.
How does this fit with what we discussed in that corner months ago? that the deepest experiences are within you, and once you start
Fits
speaking-
perfectly because of Reb Chaim's reference. Arizal says that if a person has a very deep experience, inspired by a sunrise, a niggin, whatever it might be, very deep experience, you shouldn't articulate it to someone else. Because if you articulate it to someone else, you've taken something ruchni and you made it gashmi, you made it into a reality. You don't want it to be a reality yet. Let it cook. That's all he's saying. He's saying let it cook because before there's a geula, there has to be a golus. There has to be this cooking procedure, this hamanti ki adaber. That's David HaMelech, as you say. The whole Hilchos Tefillah and the whole Sipur Yetzias Mitzrayim is the idea of taking Dvarim Shebelev, She'enam Dvarim, and bringing it out to the Bechina of reality, to the Dibur, which is called Geula. Geula, by the way, is a lashon of Gilui,
Revelation.
revealing, Megala Soy. Megala Soy. That's probably what the word means.
That's what we do in therapy, though.
That's what we do in therapy.
They're in a gullus, and when it finally comes out, that there's a gula, there's a reality for them.
Areza Meshubach. So there's two problems here. I mean, two points here, if you will, to the reality. There's two parts of the therapy. One is get it out of your system. So that's gula. And get it out. Now the question is, what comes out? Sometimes, ani amarti b'chavsi kol adam koizev. Like you're getting it out, you get the shtus out of you, because when you can't. Tell you something like, let's say, I'll give you an example. Let's say, like, you're tossing and turning, you can't sleep at night because there's some machshava, which is really being matrid you. Somebody said something, somebody did something, something happened. If you think I'm crazy here, but if you're suffering from this type of insomnia, if you'll get out of bed and go into a room where nobody hears you and just talk it out, you'll see that what you're thinking was like it had no container, it had no rule, it had no boundaries. It was just mugzab 1,000 times, hence dreams. Is mugzam 1,000 times. Whereas once you talk it out, you talked it out. So two things happen. You get it out of your system, and you created the reality into a right reality. All this is called geula. Half of a fella that all this is called geula.
Are there two stages, and one like a Shemona Esrei, and then one actually saying it out loud?
Psuke de Zimra.
But the Shemona
There's a
Esrei
Psuke
is a
de
higher
Zimra
level.
before Shemona Esrei and Psuke de Zimra after Shemona Esrei Ashrei.
So silent or speaking, whispering is a higher level
Atzilus.
of Geula.
Let me share with you something here. I think it's vital. There's a Mechilta. The Mechilta says, parts of this are known and parts of it aren't known. The Mechilta says as follows, that the Klal Yisrael, the birth of a nation, took place at Yetzias Mitzrayim. We had Avraham, Yitzchak, Yaakov, we had Avos, but we didn't have the birth of a nation. You have a father, you don't have a kid, you don't have a nation. You have Avos, an abundant. The birth of a nation worked like this as a Mechilta in Beshalach. Mechilta says that when we went to Mitzrayim, that means Yaakov and his children, went to Mitzrayim, that was called the Hazra'ah, the insemination of the Jewish people. And when we were there for 210 years, that was called the Chodshei Ha'ibur, the months of pregnancy. And when we actually went out of Mitzrayim, and it's on this pasuk that the Mechilta speaks about, was the Leida, was the actual birth of Klal Yisrael. V'hoitzi goy mikerev goy. Mikerev goy. It was an actual birth. Birth went out of Mitzrayim. It was the birthing process. The Sfiras HaOmer or the 49 days between Yetzias Mitzrayim, after Yetzias Mitzrayim, was the Yemei Hanaka, the nursing period. The mother is still nourishing the child in a different way than before it was born, but still nourishing the child, still completely attached to the child, as it was when it was before it was born. And then Matan Torah is, according to the Mechilta, the Gemila, Vayigomel. B'yoim higomel oisai. So what is higomel? Weaning. Which Chazal, by the way, say was bar mitzvah. So meaning nursing has a number of mashma'ut, until bar mitzvah, where you're making your own choices and you're independent individual and you have your own b'chira chafshus, and you're no longer even halachically attached to your parents, except for the chiyuv of kibbut avein. But the other way is not no. Let the bird go. Go fly to coop. So you have the whole Yetzias Mitzrayim is a birthing process. The whole Geula Hasidah is a birthing process, right? Like what we talk about the Geula when we speak about the Chevlei Mashiach, which is talking about the labor pains of Mashiach, the pain of creating the Geula. It's the pain. It's the key moment here is Yotzi Goy Mikerav Goy, to take something which is banefesh, something which is esoteric, amorphous, something which doesn't have a form or boundaries, and Leda, boom, it's a person. Like that second, there's a second of Leda. Haravai of Leda. Either you're born or you're not born. It's not a gradual process. And by the way, what's the very first thing, the sign of life, when a baby is born? Crying. It's interesting like that. What they should do is, check the heart, check the brain waves, check, because somebody thinks to be bodek, what they want to hear, even in 2013, is, wah! That's what they want to hear. And the whole APGAR score is all dependent on how long did it take to cry. My gosh, your baby, it's a quiet kid.
I had one like that. I had one like that. I had one that was born, and he just looked around, and I said, the nurse, are you going to slap him? They said, no, that was 40 years ago, we didn't do that anymore.
How'd it work out?
He's still that way today. Other than that,
Still quiet.
he's very, kids are.
So are we in the weaning process now then?
I don't know where we are. I'm not sure, but the point of the slapping and the crying, as you say, is now we're taking it's deeper. It's we went from a concept, like where it's a big avera to do an abortion, but 8th month, 9th month, it's a big avera. But it's not ritzicha. It's a different avera. It's a different avera. It's not ritzicha. So it means to say it's not a person per se. The difference between yes a person and not a person is the difference between thinking something very, very clearly and actually articulating it. And until you actually articulate it, the Rambam says this in Hilchos Tshuva. He says you should be mischarit al avar, should be makabel al asid. You should, but va'acher kach yomer b'sifasav ma shegamar b'libay. The lashon of the Rambam, Perak Beis Halach Aleph. Va'acher kach yomer b'sifasav. B'sifasav, he should say with his mouth, ma shegamar b'libay, which is vidui. Vidui has to be b'peh. So the vidui is not an independent concept of tshuva. the vidui is the final articulation of the tshuva that I have done. The Rambam either there later on in Parak Dalet brings the pasuk, Borei niv svasayim, Shalom, Shalom, L'rachai. Where does it say in Kiddush Levant? We say in here, Borei niv svasayim. So, Yeshayahu, Samach Vav. A Navi, what's a Navi? What's the pirush of the word Navi?
It also means the word
Speaker.
speak, right?
Articulator. The articulator. Sounds like a name of a movie. The articulator, Borei niv svasayim, that's where the lashon of Navi came from. The reason why Chana was zoicha to a Navi, Shmuel Hanavi, is because she articulated her prayer. And that's why we learned from her. What was the Ir HaKohanim? Nov. So, this is the speaking town. Nov. Niv Svasayim. Before we daven, we say Hashem, Svasai Tiftach. Ufi Yagi Tilasecha. It's Geula. So it's so ironic because we're singing and we're saying Krishma, we're laning Krishma, we're doing everything, and now we come to the silent part. But this is the part more than any other part that we need to articulate. Hashem Svasai Tiftach, Ufi Yagi Tilasecha. We're asking Hashem for a special bakasha to let us articulate. And what is our tefillah? Here's the kavana. Hashem sefasai tiftach ufi yagi tehilasecha. What's the kavana? The kavana is that all of that which is in my heart, all of the feelings that I have right now, and the tefillahs that I have, tefillah la'ani kiyatek, the tefillahs that I have, the tsar that I have, the yeshuas that I want, the prayers that I have for myself, for my children, all of this, Hashem, Sfasai Tiftach, let it become, let those prayers have a geula. Let them have a geula and let me speak it out. This is what we learned from Chana.
Interesting, though.
I'm missing the connection between the Mechilta and our main idea on Hebrew. I understand the end of the process of the crime, but I think that...
I'm saying that Yetzias Mitzrayim is, that's what I'm trying to bring into Mechilta, is Yetzias Mitzrayim is a Leida. A Leida is the Pshat, a Leida is the Pshat that something comes min hakoach el hapoel. So when a child is born, it's a geula for that child. When a nation is born, it's a geula for that nation. It's not over yet. Now you have to go through the Yemei Hanukkah of Sir Zoymer. You have to go until you get to the Gemul of, and it's not over yet. But it's a
parallel to speaking, which is taken from Kodesh.
Which is a parallel to speaking, and that's why on Pesach night you have Pesach. Pesach, you have to be speaking, and the Tanoim were busy speaking. They were busy talking all night long, called Masaper B'tzias Mitzrayim, not for anybody to hear. It wasn't for anybody to hear necessarily. It was about the Geulas HaNefesh, which precedes the Geula of Klal Yisrael, and then the Talmidim felt it. All the Talmidim, maybe there was 1,000 Talmidim outside. Let's just picture this scene in Bnei Brak. Maybe there's 1,000 Talmidim outside. Look who's inside the room here. Rabbi Kiva, Rabbi Lazar, Rabbi Lazar Ben Azar, Rabbi Yossi, Gedolei Hadar. Gedolei Hadar, even today, if the Gedolei Hadar were inside in a meeting, everybody would be standing outside. It reminds me the famous story of Ben Gurion went to speak to the Chazon Ish once, I think. They talk about a whole relationship, but I think they came to him once, I think. And when he came to, he spoke to the Chazon Ish for an hour. And when he came out from the meeting of the Chazon Ish, so all the Talmidim of the Chazon Ish were outside the Chazon Ish's house, and they said to Ben Gurion, Mahu Amar, Mahu Amar. Like, asking Ben Gurion, what did the Chazon Ish say? So Ben Gurion was like offended, like, what do you mean, what did the Chazon say? What you ask me what I said? What did the Chazon say? That's all they cared about. Because they wanted to, this was a crucial time, Hakavos Abedina, this was a crucial time. So Ben Gurion said to them, that Bashishnei Gdolei Hador Medabrim Ein Legalot. The famous lashon of Ben Gurion. Okay, the pshat is that the diburim that took place there in Bnei Brak, Rabbi Lazar, Rabbi Kiva, they started to call Oimer Davar b'Shem Oimrei Mevi Geula Lo'olam. Geula is makushur to dibur. It's a metaphor. Dibur is a metaphor for Geula. It's a metaphor and a Metzias of Yetzias Mitzrayim. The same thing happening. Geulas Mitzrayim. Okay, so we'll go right during the concept on Sunday.
So the first place that Ben Israel went to was Peter.
Yeah.